A new year, the same duo, it's the double swing. Now, of course, before we dive straight into the next actual preview, which is for Blast Spring Groups, we're going to just do a little bit of administrative work. There was a scoreboard, and at the end of it, Yumi unfortunately ended up in last place. But I'm going to be honest, I didn't exactly shower myself in glory, especially towards the end. There were a few dubious picks, a few questionable events, and I ended up only 2 points ahead of him, and 6 points behind the viewers. You guys, obviously, you did have it a little bit easier. You didn't have to pick against anyone. You got to vote on just one team if they were right. You got double points. It was all very nicely set up for you to win, but still, you smashed us. And so we need to both take our lumps. So Yumi, you're going to be donating 50. I've decided I'm going to match it just to make it a little more interesting, because I don't feel like I deserve a true W. I'll take the spiritual win. Like, I'll be wearing my crown to bed, but I'm not going to flaunt it too heavily, and obviously going to match the donations.
Your problem was that you got ahead too early, and so your own hubris almost let you yourself lose that lead. But no, I appreciate that. At least it takes some of the financial strain off me, but also it's all going to a good cause anyway. So
it is. It truly is. But yeah, speaking of hubris, already wearing this year's NFL Champions jersey. For those of you who follow the sport, you know I'm getting cocky. But yeah, the charity of choice is going to be the Trussell Trust. A bit of a mouthful, that one, but it's a charity that essentially is supporting the poor with food donations primarily. So we'll be supporting them, donating a total of £100. And if anyone wants to join in, I'll attach the link under the tweet for this video and in the comments. Sorry, not the comments, the description. So yeah, that's a great cause. And of course, there's going to be another wager on for this year's go round. I think. Are we going to double the stakes, or have we not made it big enough for that?
I'm fine with that, to be quite honest. You know, again, it's all to charity in the end. So
okay,
let's just do it. I don't mind.
Double up. So on this season, there's £100 on the line. Of course, viewers, if you guys lose, it'd be hilarious to start a public fund, I guess, if you guys
come on, pay up.
Like that'll be amusing to try and do at the end of the year, but I'm going to assume one of us will lose, because it's been the case so far every season. Has been the same guy, but let's not rub it in too much. And yeah, let's get into the first event. Blast Spring Groups 2024. Iconically boring name. Group A. Now this is a banger group. I think coming into this, we thought, well, personally I took a look through this. We didn't actually talk about this. I took a look through the groups. They felt a bit uneven. Very uneven. Like, some groups look stacked to the brim, and some groups look like a challenger event. So Group A, there's a couple picks that you've actually made in this one. I'll let you take off. Who's caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, I could say both picks, but the obvious one is going to be Vitality. Team of the Year came out of the end of last season as victors of the World Finals, also able to just be, I think, a squad that were super consistent, even though they had a lot of moving pieces. You know, Magisk was out. There was bringing in Flamesy as well. And then ultimately settling on Mezzy. I initially thought that the Mezzy move was going to land pretty handily. I didn't expect that they would win an event straight away from it, but I like that they've been able to hit the ground running with this squad, because I think if anybody caught the HLTV award show, even Apex was sort of talking about how the difficulties for him as an in-game leader throughout the years, whether it's been bringing in new players or, you know, a lot of struggles integrating those new pieces. For him now, like, not only was he a great in-game leader for not only this year, but also, you know, towards the tail end of last year as well. There's a lot to like about this squad outside of just Zywoo, which is, I think, one of the main draws for me on this pick.
Yeah, 100%. It's a complete roster. They've got themselves a superstar Rauber, a star rifler who borders on the superstar at times. I think his placement this year was fair. Number 5. It was pretty predictable when you got down to it once you saw who was left. But yeah, overall, like, you lost Magisk, and you thought, oh man, that's a big piece, a foundational piece, a supportive role. But bringing in Mezzy, we kind of liked it. And as you just pointed out, I don't think either of us expected it to really be that much of a slam dunk. It was supposed to be just a small W, keep on ticking, see what we can build. Instead, it was just, hey, we're Team of the Year now. We're just going to win everything. So really impressive that Mezzy slotted in so well. And yeah, dangerous pick, and the number 1 pick for obvious reason. I just want to touch on, quickly, before we move on to, I think, the other match, their opponent in the opening game OG. They're a team who've not changed as much. I'm not picking them here, just so anyone gets confused. We're just going to go through all these groups. There's a lot to get through. They've made a move that I think, well, they've technically made two, but there's one I want to focus on, and that's the signing of Heavy God, who, if people haven't watched play, has been not quite a revelation, because those of us who saw him in Endpoint saw him slowly, progressively get better as he took more and more of a starring role. But he's become an absolute force so far in the games I've been able to catch of him playing on OG, because he's dominating through massive impact without milking the opening kills. For those of you who don't understand how impact rating works, if you just take 50% of the opening fights, win 40% of those fights, you'll end up with a great impact rating. It's kind of weird. He's not taking those opening fights and just multiing over and over again. He's an absolute turret. He just sits there, frags out, and he's been absolutely balling. So, really impressive pickup. Hopefully it translates in Tier 1 and against proper prepped opposition that OG should be playing month in, month out. Because, I'll be honest, in the Open Qualifier, you do play a lot of completely random teams. So, maybe it's a bit early to get that excited, but I'm really liking the way this OG roster looks just because of that.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns I have about this squad, because I agree, Heavy God to me was kind of surprising, because when he first came in to sort of replace, like, first it was, what was it, Nerds first or Flames first? On Endpoint.
It was
Heavy
Nerds.
God.
It was Nerds.
Yeah. Basically, nobody thought of him as a one-to-one, this guy is going to become what Nerds could be, or what Flames could be, because they'd seen prospects come out of that Endpoint squad already. Heavy God actually seemed like the lesser of any of them in terms of like role potential at the start. But like you said, the guy just like grew into the role, and now he is this kind of sort of mid-round force. But I think the concern I have with OG is, unfortunately, he ends up in a lot of these sort of like 3v3 situations, or like sometimes even like 3v5s, where he's finding a lot of his impact. And that's great. That's probably not the most transferable to, Tier 1 Counter-Strike or higher level opponents, when your team are struggling to find openers in some of these opening qualifiers or these open qualifiers. That's my real concern, is that even though Heavy God looks good, this roster still feels very heavily flawed to me.
Yeah, they are. I think on CD side, you can consistently rely on, I think, Regali, not to be stable and steady, but to just have highlight after highlight. Like, he's going to have 3 or 4 highlight rounds per half when he gets his AWP. Quick correction, though, by the way. It was Boros he actually replaced. That's the timeline. I just double-checked it. Right. Something felt wrong in my head. I felt like I'd seen both him and Nertz on the team at the same time. And that's it. When he got to fill in, essentially, I guess, Nertz roles a bit more, and then take the starring role, that's how the transition happened. But yeah, let's get back on track. They, as a squad in its entirety, haven't looked great. I don't think Keto's been calling a particularly tight game. I don't think that the other guys on the roster really played particularly well, like Nexius. And I even forget sometimes that Fiku's on this team. But him and Regali give them something to build off. I guess that's a positive in the long term. Short term, not that much to be excited about, hence why neither one of us have picked them. You did have an underdog pick from this group, though. Who was it?
Yeah, I picked Astralis, who, honestly, it almost feels like cheating that they are considered an underdog team, but the first event that they played, I'm trying to remember, I think it was, I'm just fact-checking real quick so I don't make this mistake. What was it? CAC, I think? Yes, CAC. That didn't look too impressive, but that was also very raw, very new in term. Actually, no, COC was the last event they played with the previous roster. What am I smoking? That Boom Dasha.
That's the one. That's the one.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, same reasons. Very new team. Trying to integrate two players that are used to a completely different calling style, which I do think some of the performance out of Yabi and Stown was actually kind of propped up by the calling on Heroic, so adapting, even though they've got a lot of mechanical skill, will take some time. But I think, if this roster slots, they've just got so much power. Like, you've got Device, who looks great, Blame F looked great, both players within the top 20. You've got, Stown, Yabi, also in that same kind of conversation. And you've got Stare kind of just chilling, supporting however he can. Hell, I imagine his role is going to go through quite a bit of turmoil implementing these new guys in. But if this team fails, then there has got to be a conversation had about whether BlameF is suitable as an in-game leader, whether they bring somebody in, or whether the coaching staff are doing enough work behind the scenes at Astralis. Because in theory, this team is just, it's got so much raw potential.
I've got a feeling this team is... Do you remember when the first sort of super team FaZe was assembled? And it initially felt too good to be true. Like, this team cannot possibly fit together and function and make sense. But when it finally did, do you remember IEM New York 2017?
No, not really. But
okay, well, it's seared
I know
in my
the
memory.
squad.
Yeah, that event seared in my memory because not only did they win the event, they didn't drop a map, and only in the grand final did they drop more than 6 or 7 rounds. And that was in the second map of a best of 5, in which they won it like 16-11, 16-12, and then won the other 2 maps like 16-5. It was one of the most brutally dominant runs ever. I was actually, unfortunately, not able to watch the game live, but I was on my phone seeing this happen and just telling everyone I could. Like the next day, I was telling my family, like my parents, like my 50-year-old boomer dad, like, yo, you have to, this is crazy. Like, this is one of the most lopsided things I've ever seen. I got a feeling this Astralis roster, if it clicks, because the pieces in each individual role could be so incredibly impactful, yeah, we could see that sort of top end. I just think there's a few things missing that they can't ever replicate from that dream FaZe lineup, and one of the big ones is that IGL. I don't think there's any amount of coaching that can really replace that. So if BlameF figures it out, he should be the #1 player of the year. If he figures out how to make that Astralis lineup tick whilst getting his numbers, I don't care if his numbers are half that of Simple's, if he does that on the server as an intellect and as a player, give him player of the year. That's ridiculous. That should be impossible in my eyes. They should be a middling team that sometimes looks good, not an actually functional, dominating roster. It just doesn't make sense, so give it to him.
Yeah, the thing for me is that, like, even if you draw comparisons with that FaZe roster, fine, but they're communicating in Danish. Like, this is native tongue, mother tongue for the whole squad. You know, that was always the problem with the FaZe rosters before, was that, like, oh, how's international teams how's it all gonna work? Because it was such a brand new concept at the time in terms of actually seeing success from one of these international squads. So I don't think there should be as much upstart time. I don't think I'd give the same credence to BlameF, because I think he's got a lot of very, very strong pieces. Also, there's no chance that he'd end up getting a boost to his performance just because he's the in-game leader. Like, he wouldn't go higher up the rankings, because we've seen consistently that doesn't seem to factor or matter at all, really, in terms of rankings. It's all numbers.
On other people's rankings, I guess. You could say that.
Yeah, the sort of community power rankings, he'd definitely go up.
Yeah, he'd be an absolute living god, but I think there is an aspect that does make it slightly easier, but the difficulty is there of trying to get that system built and functioning will be immense. So, question marks, but definitely in terms of an underdog pick, perfect, because they are power-wise in terms of the players on paper far above their station, but you know, a lot to figure out. So, a bit of an if, a bit of a maybe, and the final team in this group is Falcons. It's pretty much ends with a couple changes. We all followed this transfer saga. I think the most curious part for me is going to be how Boros looks. If bringing in a Danish IGL, some more veteran pieces, a very experienced coach, how's his gameplay going to look? Because we remember him when he was actually on his best form in Monty at the Major. It wasn't smart CS. It wasn't thought through. It was, instead of being like a slow, thought out, intelligent piece of cinema, it was Fast and the Furious 10. And sure, whilst effective at entertaining and in this case winning games, not something you're going to look for in a Danish system, and not exactly something you're expecting to find consistent success. So that's the biggest question mark for me. The rest of this squad I really like, and I like Boros as an individual, as a dynamite player, but I'm not sure how he's going to fit in the system, so that's my big question mark. How does he look?
Yeah, no, I think the struggle that you'll have with Falcons at the start is Boros, I think, will lose more rounds for this Falcons team than win. I still like this, and this is maybe sort of harping on too much ancient history for Boros, really. But back on Endpoint, it seemed like they were struggling to sort of contain or control him, because Endpoint don't play like a super sporadic type game plan. They always seem to like want to approach rounds methodically, and Boros would kind of break that mold. It did actually have sort of ripple repercussions into who the next players were, or how they were set up in Endpoint afterwards. So maybe Boros was onto something. But to me, he doesn't seem like the type of player that's great within systems. And it's strange because I almost wanted somebody like this on Ents previously. Like, I would have loved a Yakindar to Ents for somebody like Madden, maybe, where you had someone that felt like he understood his role and understood small timings he could take in the game to get an advantage in those opening fights, but then also was fine playing like a slower style when needed to. Like, I worry that Boros's patience isn't exactly present in or a part of his repertoire. So yeah, no, I think he's the biggest question mark. I think all the other pieces, like you said, it's just kind of Ents plus Magisk, and I don't think that anyone else is going to have real issues. So
yeah, Magisk.
I wanted to pick the Falcons team, but also at the same time, I hated following the whole saga of them. Oh, are we gonna get these players? Who are we gonna get? Oh no, and they just ended up nicking a core from somewhere else and plopping it straight into Falcons. Like, I thought they were gonna build something new, but
nah,
here we are.
No, all they've ended up doing is just smart, I think, is the begrudging credit you have to give them. And yeah, if there's anyone you expect to slot straight into a new roster with a coach he's played with before, it's Magisk. So the one question mark remains. The rest of the squad is solid. Speaking of question marks, we've got some pretty big ones in the next group, Group B. We also have my first actual pick, and that's going to be FaZe as a favourite. Now, obviously, I'm not going to have to beleaguer this point particularly much. We all know why FaZe is up here. They were the second best team last year. They closed out the year with a couple second places, not necessarily on the hottest streak, but integrating Frozen into the system and figuring out exactly how they're going to play with him instead of Twist. It's an odd comparison, him and Twist. For me, the roles aren't too similar, but I feel like they're not too disparate that you can't just figure it out. And that's kind of what FaZe are going through. They kind of have had to figure out some stuff over the course of the last year, and going into CS2, like some new roles on riflers. Rops looked a little different at times. I think Brokey's a player who can adjust his playstyle fairly consistently, and Rain's very experienced, so it's the pieces are there to make it, flow into a new form. But I'm just a bit of a slow start last year. I think this is a break. They get to build into this event with all that pre-existing knowledge on themselves, that tape, as it were, to study. I think this event, they get a comfortable first place in their group with nothing really to worry me. I think, yes, if they have to play Spirit in the upper final, that could get a bit fun. But otherwise, the consolidation final, I have no worries in the world. Because if they're facing Liquid in the upper bracket, that's a W. So, very interesting team to talk about in that sense, where they're very stable. They're expected to just come flying through here. And whilst they weren't the most exciting at the end of last year, I'm not losing sleep over this pick.
Yeah, I mean, best team in CS2 out of the gate, and then, slowly sort of lost a little bit of steam. Still a very, very consistent level of performance from this squad, even when they were undergoing that roster move. And I think I was talking to Maui Snake about how, the swap in for Frozen, the roles are different, but Frozen has also played so many different roles. And he's also developed so much as a player. Like, he is a much more complete package now, linking back up with Rops and with Karrigan, that this team has so many options in terms of like what kind of openers they can go for. Rops was also playing a much more aggressive brand of Counter-Strike on his T sides towards the end of last year as well. So I just feel like they have so many sort of entry options and different paths that they can take on T sides. I would hazard to say that FaZe are probably going to be the best T-side team within the first 6 months of this year. So I just think they've got so many tools in the toolkit in that regard. So yeah, I think FaZe is a very solid pick.
Okay, yeah. Interesting little piece of perspective there. Their opponent in their opening matchup is Gamer Legion, a team who we we briefly discussed pre-show, but Yumi, I'm going to let you voice essentially the consensus on this team. It's not one we're particularly worried about. Neither one of us picking them as underdogs.
The thing is about this squad, like first off, let me just preface this. I'm biased. I love Volt as a player. I think Ash as a coach is also great. Both the UK guys through and through. Yeah, I know Volt's changed his flag to Romania on HLTV, but these were guys that were within the endemic UK scene for a long period of time, and they first Volt flew under my radar, but I always knew Ash to be a great coach. So as soon as he sort of picked into this, I knew he'd spotted something and was ready to utilize it. The problem that they've had is that, one, they lost Imma, who had his struggles on Na'Vi and is looking a little bit better these days. But then they also lost Shui, and the problem that they've had since is that trying to replace him has been a very, very difficult endeavor. And I think it was at ESL Challenger Jönköping, where I was working as an analyst, and it was, I think, the first event that Gamer Legion were in attendance of since their drop out of IEM Sydney, where they upset FaZe and looked quite glamorous from that point of view, because FaZe go on to win the whole tournament. But for me, watching those games, it looked like Gamer Legion were just getting away with rounds that didn't seem replicatable, and maybe that's to do with anti-stratting, maybe it's something to do with just players sort of settling in a honeymoon period. But this squad, to me, is just still missing some of the confidence and flair from the core that actually stayed with Gamer Legion. I feel like they've almost lost their identities as to how they can play. And then you have Snacks trying to bed in a whole new system and make use of the different pieces. But I just feel like the confidence has shrunk on all these individual players that Gamer Legion, to me, just, I want to be hopeful for them, because I think Snacks could be a great in-game leader, but I just think there's so many other problems with this roster that I kind of don't know how to place them. And I think the problem that they have is that they've got all these invites to all these tournaments that at some point are going to dry up if they don't get results here. So in a way, I'm quietly rooting for them, and in a way, I'm also a little bit begrudged because I got called out on Twitter for being too harsh and, Gamer Legion, how dare you talk bad about my team? And then we look at the end of the year for Gamer Legion, and they start to see what we saw back then. So
yeah,
I worry for them. I do, but you can only hope that they do well at this or Katowice.
Yeah, I've been fighting narratives, let's put it, on certain fronts when it comes to this team. I have an ongoing, a sort of running joke on Retake the Week with my Swedish co-host about Isak. He seems to believe he's a god. I believe the complete opposite. So, yeah, it's a team They annoyingly got a good result at the major, which allowed them to get invites to a bunch of events, which I didn't want to see them play at. And they did barely enough to keep afloat in terms of maintaining their ranking, keeping these invites coming. And I was just like, they're not that good a team. And as the star power kind of ebbed and Ema left, Suhei left, it went from mid to worse. What we're left with is an Akor who doesn't look as fired up as he was early on. Isak and Kios putting up IGL numbers. And a Volt who's desperately trying to save it, but there's nothing much else to look at. So I'm pretty done with this team. I don't think they're going to make it out of this group. I think they'll be lucky to get a map, considering who they're playing against. And maybe they can get some good prep on the new, the teams that have maybe made a roster move. But I don't know. Even then, I'm grasping at straws here. I'm not really feeling either of those actual statements to be true. So let's move swiftly onwards to the team we would have basically been coming to blows over if we needed to actually pick these face to face. It's Spirit, which I believe you have taken as your underdog pick.
I have indeed picked Spirit as an underdog pick.
So
how are they an underdog pick? There's
bloody rankings, man. Bloody rankings.
I know the rankings are. I couldn't believe my eyes. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? Donk.
Yeah.
Just
donk.
Just donk. First off, should have been in the HLTV top 20, by the way. I don't care about all these achievements, blah, blah, blah. Listen, in years past, we have gone off of, let's look at the guy on the eye test. This guy is fucking unbelievable. And Donk is that guy. He's him. The only games he goes negative or he has struggles against is against Virtus Pro. Like, that's the only team that he has struggled to put up, 1.35, 1.4 numbers against. Like, this guy is legit, and then they've also got Shiro. Like, they've added Shiro, one of the best AWPers in the world. Yeah, maybe motivation takes a hit. You know, they got rid of Nafany, they thought they solved all their problems, and then they realized, like, wait a second, maybe I was the problem. And so Shiro, after some self-reflection, now goes to Chopper. And, you know, maybe I'm not the most confidence enthused with the whole Chopper in-game leading thing, but they've got so much here. They were definitely, like, the tier 2 team of the year, if you're gonna put, like, a weird, like, medal up on their shoulders, I guess. Like, this team cooks. I love that they're against Liquid first, because, like, Liquid, first off, expected to make the major, expected to do quite well here. You know, brand new sort of super team for North America. And, you know, they've got a lot to prove against a team that's been budding and has been outside of the invite systems for Blast, for ESL Pro League, and they're trying to chew their way in. And they've got a spot now at Blast with that affiliate expansion that they've done this season.
I mean, yeah. Even when the roster didn't have Shiro casually throwing his weight into the mix, it was Art Frost who, in my eyes, in the demos I watched, the eye test, he's not on the level of a Shiro, on the level of a Dexter. He's still a really good AWPer, so the team was already really fun to watch. And you had some underrated talents on there, like I think Magic still doesn't get his flowers, and Zontix actually has maps and series where he's bloody brilliant. Like, he's at times shining quite bright. So this roster goes deep. I think Chopper, honestly, personally, for me, Chopper, I think is a very good IGL. I've always enjoyed watching his games, the way he especially executes T-sides. And I've seen some amazing, like, counter strats from him. So I'm a big fan of Chopper. But I just think, if this team's an underdog, I'm picking them every time. God damn you. That's pretty much all there is to it. This is an absolute monster roster. Near and, like, I don't think you can make much better in terms of a not quite there. Like, a bunch of Russian players who haven't had that big break, or CIS players like Sontix, Ukrainian, you know, young guys up and coming. There's no better group of them. This is going to be a dangerous squad. I see them smashing Liquid, honestly. Not that Liquid have looked bad in the open qualifiers and closed qualifiers. Closed qualifier, I think they played in NA, whatever it was, that event. Not that they look bad there. It's just that they didn't look convincing enough to withstand getting donked. Who, by the way, Donk, another Retake the Week reference for you. My bold prediction of the year, he's a top 3 player this year. He ends in the, not my top 3, the HLTV top 3 players this year. And I don't think it's crazy. I think they're going to come out here, they're going to qualify for the spring finals, and we'll just keep on rolling from there. This is going to be a crazy good team.
They've got to attend enough events to qualify. You know,
they've got the Blast affiliateship now. They've got that opening, and they will smash this group. So,
but they can't win the banana cups to get themselves in. It doesn't matter how many numbers Donk puts up. He will be exempt if they don't attend or compete at enough S tier caliber events. So
they will. Don't worry.
I have that faith as well. And, you know, shout out Shiro for basically device knocking this team, like what happened in NIP. Like,
yeah, when that guy comes knocking, you can't say no. So everyone begrudgingly goes, I guess the decent AWPer goes out, the great AWPer comes in. Sorry, mate.
It's how dare you lay the foundations for now Shiro to succeed.
Yeah, awful. But their opponent in their opening game is Liquid, who, when they started talking about building a new roster, and we started hearing who was signing, I was really excited. Because I first hypothesized where Cadian could go when he left Heroic. Was removed surgically. A cesarean, you could call it. Stabbed. Maybe in the front, maybe in the back. I theorized Liquid, purely because Liquid were in desperate need of 2 things, AWPing and calling. And that ended up coming true, and they built close to the roster I was hoping they might build in terms of returning to North America. Now, obviously, I didn't really anticipate that Twist would become available, but I did think they'd make some North American signings if they were available, if there were good ones on the market, and return to the easier side of the RMR world, like the easy way to get to the major, because that's a guaranteed, basically, cruise to the major if you can build a half-decent squad and play in North America. So that's pretty much what they've done. The team ends up looking, very solid. The only exception, the person who is always up for debate, I see him in every Twitch chat, anytime Liquid is mentioned, will Skulls actually be any good? Can he not be garbage? because he's taken some minor criticism, essentially. A little bit of criticism. Like, I did a show with Maui Snake, we talked about this guy, his move with Liquid was upcoming. Yeah, we had some criticisms. I think he's taken a little too much flack. I think a lot of people are skeptical because of what happened with Rainwaker. He came out of Tier 2, people weren't expecting that. He got shafted on his roles, didn't play anywhere near to the level he surely could maybe do on his Bulgarian sides. And as well, I'm pretty sure the comms were horrendous for him. So everything went wrong for Rainwaker. It looked terrible on the server. Everyone's scared of that repeating with Skulls. Yumi, do you have faith in him? Do you think he's going to play to a higher level?
It's also, I think, I'd like to draw the comparison with like Junior to what Furia, or like to have these sort of cross pawn
Brazil's revenge.
Yeah, not exactly making use of the team because language barriers and getting used to the culture. You know, I can expect that there always going to be a little bit of skepticism because you don't want to get. There's already enough excitement about this Liquid roster. You don't want to get too excited. Like, people want to have their reservations now so they can prepare for disappointment in the future. And then they have to escape.
They can act like they always knew. Like, I was an analyst in this scenario. I understood the problems.
And it's not like Liquid don't know that could be a potential problem. And yeah, Skulls does look like he's sort of losing some composure in moments. But I think you give this team time. Like, I like enough of it so far, but yeah, I think they've got some real trials ahead of them. I do hope that teams coming into this event, and this is not just a comment about Liquid, like the squads as a whole, actually take the event seriously enough, because there's just so much of a ramp up between this to Katowice to the major or like the RMRs that if I see teams slacking here, I worry that they're not going to be in the right headspace or have enough like in-game repetitions to actually transfer that when it really matters for the major. So
yeah, not enough quality reps. I think that's the key, because you can't throw this event and not have those quality reps just in the bank, just to go back on, to fall back on. If there's a desperate call you tried once at Blast Spring Groups that you know's in your playbook, well, you didn't run it properly first time, you don't know if it's going to work the second time. So they need to take this event seriously. That's a good point that I think a lot of teams need to really
the unfortunate part for Blast is usually that, you know, we come out of player breaks and they're right at the start of the season, and then there's another event straight afterwards that's like a major championship instead of just the groups. So like that's the problem they have, is that people just treat it as like, oh, this is just practice, but you know, maybe we can make it to the World Finals. Like, please try and make it to the World Finals. Like, actually try.
Yeah, that CSPPA ESL schedule sandwich is always a problem for them. Add to that their lack of real iconic like history and value. Like we always talk about, even I saw this in the HLTV sort of justifications they have for their rankings. A new stat: it's your rating at super elite events, because of course you can't call it prestige because Thorin said that and you guys don't like him. So super elite is the term they had to go with now, which I find so corny and shit. Like, just take the L, call it prestige. But they try to slip that in, and you've realised from looking at the numbers that it is just the major, Cologne, Katowice. Like, these are the super elite events, these are the special ones. We all know it narratively, everyone's kind of accepting it. You got to feel bad for Blast on that front, just a little bit, just a little bad for them.
I mean, it's kind of their own fault as well. Like, they don't brand the tournament after cities, which is something that has been done by ESL for a long time. You know, that builds history, that builds attachment to cities. They could have had the spring finals be like Blast Copenhagen or whatever, because...
Or the World Finals, or whatever it is, like, have it consistently in a location. Like, you think Copenhagen, the Royal Arena, you couldn't have come up with a banger name off of the Royal Arena?
Well, the thing is, like, they could have done, and this is just tangenting, but they could have done spring and fall finals in very set locations. Doesn't have to be Copenhagen every time. And then the World Finals can go fucking anywhere, you know?
Sure. That's
the one that they sell to their, you know, sponsors or whoever, and just be like, hey, you know, do you want the World Finals here? We've had a build up. We have the history for these squads. You know, it's, I think it's a branding issue for them, but, you know, that's, I think, been a lot of the conversation with Blast. So
something I've been banging on about for ages, how much I hate the name of the events. and
the first big event in Copenhagen for Counter-Strike, hell, Counter-Strike 2 is run by PGL.
Yep.
That's the biggest kick in the teeth.
That's your city. That's your home turf. Come on,
in Blast. The Royal Arena.
Yep. Oh, brilliant. Absolutely hilarious. But no, let's move on to Group C, because this one's I think, a really tough group to wrap your head around. Because on the one hand, you do have a pick I have taken for my favourite, and that's G2. But on the other hand, you have some other weird teams we're not quite sure what to make of. But let's start on the G2 front. Now, they obviously pissed the world off by cutting HooXi and signing Nexa on two fronts, really. Cutting JKS. Yeah, I've messed up all those names. Let's start that again. They cut JKS and signed Nexa. My mind I just spoke. My ears didn't hear it till it was way too late.
Freudian slip, like, this is what I wanted to happen, and it didn't happen.
It really fucking was. But they went out, they cut JKS, Reddit's favourite. They signed Nexa, a player a lot of people really don't like. So in two ways they pissed off the community. But I'm going to be honest. I watched the strat book with Thorin, the Nexa did, and the way he discussed the way, like, how the team works made perfect sense to me. It's kind of what I've believed for a long time. There's a decision group of Nico and friends in terms of the style they want to approach and how they're going to actually default, how they're going to do these things. It's a group, essentially, decision, how all that stuff works. And then in the server, the IGL gets certain start of round calls, and then the mid-rounding is done. Well, you've got two really high IQ, like, kind of extremity players in Hunter and Nico. Mid-rounding is going to be very much shared, and it's going to be heavily influenced by these players. So that's kind of what he was saying initially, is that he didn't feel like a real leader in that team when he was IGL. He felt like that was the only role that he really had to do, was be like the man manager sort of leader. The fact that now he's come back in the team as a support player, and the team they played half decently. It didn't look like a massive step down. You replaced JKS with a guy who doesn't frag as well. I think JKS does have, like, the mechanical advantage on Nexa, but there's not the win condition. The win condition has historically been Nico, Hunter, and m0NESY. And if you can get those three playing comfortably and playing well, you can win events. I just don't know if to win events when you're playing against Vitality, when you're playing against FaZe, I'm not sure you're going to have the firepower to truly keep up unless Nico's hard carrying. But to get out of these groups, fuck yeah, you've got everything you need. I don't think there's a single negative matchup for them remaining here.
Yeah, no, I think that's the positives are kind of lined up. I do find it just kind of funny, like, watching G2 go through their in-game leader catalog and going like, oh, well, so Nexa, no control. Alexi B, too much control. HooXi, he's somewhere in the middle. Yeah, we'll stick with HooXi, and Nexa, you're back in. You know, like, first off, I love the idea of them getting rid of potential in-game leaders on that front, because everybody's scrambled to get in-game leaders properly on their squad, and, you know, Nexa doesn't seem like he wanted to do that much anyway, and didn't want to do it on G2, let alone do it on OG. So, yeah, in a sense, it does feel like they've saved Nexa a bit, you know, because OG did seem like it was just running into a brick wall, and maybe that's still the case now. But yeah, I don't think, like, I wanted to be very critical of the JKS move, and I definitely was at the start. But, like, the longer I've thought about it, and I think that there was even an interview that Nico gave out about, like, you know, you don't have the full story about, you know, how he sort of gels with the team. So basically, the inference for those sort of not keeping ear to floor is that, you know, JKS just didn't match the vibe, or he, you know, didn't seem to, you know, offer up what they wanted in, you know, communicatively. So yeah, I think there is something there. You know, they go with a player that they're definitely comfortable with, that will communicate with them, I imagine, very seamlessly. And yeah, I think this G2 team looked fine enough last year. That's why the move, the JKS removal did feel very strange, is that, like, they looked like they were improving as the year went on, and then all of a sudden JKS is out and Nex is in. So
yeah, when we looked at the year in
they'll be fine.
When I looked at the year in review, I kind of thought, wait, were G2 the third best team in the world last year? Like, hold up. Maybe not in terms of how we saw them and how they performed event to event, but if you looked across the year, they won Cologne and Kato. Like, that's huge. That's not, like, just two random events. That's not no Thunderpick Banana Cup that FaZe won.
Those are super elite events.
Those are super elite. That's legit right there. So I just get so, like, muddled about what to think about this. But yeah, I guess they were the third best team last year. They've gotten their results weren't great when they cut JKS, but at the same time, like, the play was all right. I don't know. I think they'll go out of this group. I think beyond this point, when we get to events like Katowice, I've got a feeling we're going to get some very disappointing results from G2. And sorry, Rasmus, Kassad might win this one by the end of March. I'm sorry, I've got a bad feeling. This series of events is not going to end in your favour. So there's a revolving door at G2, and it's starting to swing again.
Yeah. I think the only thing would be is that if they did get rid of Hooksy, they're like, well, Nexa, it's time to in-game lead once again, and Nexa's just like, fuck, I thought I escaped this. Like, I got out last time.
Oh, I've had my money on the Hunter IGL bet for a little bit, and I don't think it's going to be a permanent solution. I also don't think it's going to be a particularly effective solution, but I think it's something that they might have to go for as like a Hail Mary to just try and solve everything, because if they do end up dissatisfied with their results, who are you going to cut? Nico's cousin, the third best AWPer in the world, the support player you just brought in, or Hooksy, who everyone roasts? Like, there's two clear options, and I think one of them has had a lot longer to prove himself than the other in terms of his role on this team.
Hell, he won more events with G2 than Nexa ever really did, so, you know. In terms of actual trophies,
in terms of trophies, yes, but in terms of you try winning events with Amnex and Jax, though, like to make major finals with that roster, I thought spoke volumes to Nexa's leadership, to be honest. But hey, that's just me. I've had a lot of controversial takes about Nexa over the years. Let's keep going down this group though. Their opening matchup is against NIP, my underdog pick, which really doesn't feel that great. I'm going to be completely honest, it's another one of those picks I've made where I just go, take a risk, take a shot in the dark. I already painted the picture as to why I believed in this team last year. I'm just going to say it basically again. Alex, IGL, structure, gets a lot out of not much. Here, you give him good stuff, make work. Hedrick's talented, Config is still a beast when he wants to. Rez had more series that were good than bad towards the end of last year, which is atypical because he's been the bad side of inconsistent prior to that signing. I think this team has a lot of potential. This group is pretty poor outside of G2. I think Complexity hit a bit of a lull. If they get out of that lull at this event, then perhaps NIP don't make it out of the group. But assuming their form holds poor, I think, yeah, this is a good opportunity for NIP to come out. That's it. There's not much else to it. I'm going to be honest. I put a lot of thought into everything else. This team, I just took a shot.
Yeah, I feel like you did. I mean, you said it yourself. You made the argument for them before, and
it went catastrophically. But also, at the time, we said technically you should need more time for this to work. But I'll take the risk now anyway. They've had a little more time. I'm going to keep picking them until they're good. Let's be honest. Just going to keep trying.
At some point, you're going to have to cut your losses. At some point, it's just a sunken cost fallacy.
Next month, they cut Esatag. They sign Maxter. The team gets twice as good. Overnight. Okay. Bleed missed their chance. They're going to regret the day they didn't sign Maxter.
Yeah, so you're not even trying. You're not even aiming for they're going to do well here. You're trying to sort of low-key GM for them for the future.
No, I think they got a chance to make it out of this group. I mean, will they win a second place match? We'll have to wait and see. Config could carry you through a series though on a good day. So I think there's reasons enough to pick them.
I think NIP are the worst team in this group, so we're on completely opposite ends of the spectrum here. Like,
I just it's like this group essentially has like one of the 4 best teams in the world, then 3 teams from 15th to 20th. Like, it's kind of that sort of vibe. Like, they're not literally that in terms of the rankings, but just in terms of how they've played recently, I don't like any of them. I just don't like any of them.
Yeah, well, players didn't probably adhere to the player break as long as they should have, because, you know, the CSPPA doesn't even exist anymore, and also there's big events to come, and we had major qualifiers, open qualifiers rather, right at the start of the year. So people didn't actually have the time to sit around and sort of figure things out. They had to figure it out during some of that holiday. You know, I just think like Navi to me are still a very, very solid team. Like, Bits looked and improved since Wonderful like came in and I think was actually being given some decent resources, and I think was producing quite well. Like, I think there's just so many. Unfortunately for me, the conversation is not about NIP. It's more about the other teams in this group. And I'm willing to give NIP the time they need, but now is unfortunately not the time to be playing the sympathy card.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get any points out of that pick, I don't think. But I just felt like they.
If it pulls through,
if it pulls through, I look like a genius.
I don't know what you see, but you saw. You cooked somehow.
I pretty much just see config, head trick, and a dream. But hey, it's enough for me. It's enough for me. They just got to make every event in. Well, I was about to say make every game into a bar fight. Then I remembered he's not actually very good at those either. So maybe not. Maybe not. Let's move on to the final two teams of this group, though. We got Na'Vi and Complexity. Na'Vi, yeah, I saw them as fourth in the world. I thought, that's just carryover from something. Then I realised, actually, no, they finished the year not that weak. Like, they event placing-wise, they actually looked all right. There's still, for me, too many questions surrounding, like, Ima's role. Is JL supposed to be the third star? Can Bit keep up this sort of performance? Like, we saw a really good end to the year for him, like, individually. I just didn't. They're a team I'd have to pick as a favourite. I couldn't pick them as a favourite, I'm going to be honest. So it's one of those rough ones where you're like, high ranked, big names, not feeling it.
Like them enough to pick them, but not as a favourite. Like, if they were somehow lower on the rankings, I could see myself picking them as well.
Yeah.
I think, they're unfortunately in the weird place where they're kind of in the middle of the favourites, and they also have enough. They have enough sort of problems or like problem factors that could occur in these tournaments. So, I could see why neither of us picked them, but I do think they play, decent CS, and I think their players are good enough. So, there's no reason for me that, like, in all honesty, I think it should be G2 Na'Vi out of this group. So,
probably on paper that makes sense. We'll see if NIP have anything to say about that, seeing as it's their event to lose. But finally, let's quickly talk about this Complexity roster, who in CS2, pretty impressive in spurts, but then they did manage to have the absolute NA-ness. I don't know how to put this, like, so Americana to just go to shitty events you're supposed to win and just shit the bed. Like, what the hell was that? Espoo and Atlanta, like, even on home soil, they looked awful. So hopefully those are just, I don't know, early holidays. Like, they thought, I just got to play this event in basically Helsinki, and I get to go home pretty much to Atlanta, finally start seeing family and friends again. It's going to be the holidays. Maybe we're just not that committed. Like, is that a realistic sort of take on this? 'Cause they just fell off a cliff overnight, it felt like.
I almost want to say that it was probably they prepped a fuck ton for IEM Sydney, and then they had these other events lined up afterwards where, first off, they have to travel back from Australia to North America to Europe, and then to Europe, then North America, I think in that order. And then they probably don't have the same sort of buffer time that they need to get that sort of practice and prep in going into those events. And also, they did show a lot of what they had worked on leading up into IEM Sydney at the event, because they make it to the finals, for God's sakes. So, for me, like, there was probably a lot of different factors as to why Complexity did poorly. But, even coming into the Americas qualifiers, they did look like they had a few sort of chinks in the armor for me. I don't know if that was just because they were keeping cards close to their chest because they knew they had other events coming up, and they should still be shoe-ins to make it out, and I think they have. So,
they went 3-0. The only one that was close was the NRG game that went to like quintuple overtime or something. But no, they crushed Fluffy Aimers, whoever the hell that is, and then crushed Party Astronauts because they're bad. So not actually that uncomfortable. It's just that that's overtime series against NRG. Ooh, at times you felt for NRG. You're like, that could have been it, because NRG ended up actually going out 2-3, so that's rough. But back to the point.
Yeah, no, I just think, even though they looked a little bit worrisome in places, that NRG team, to me, isn't going to be too much, even though the expectations are probably set quite high. I think Complexity are another one of these contender teams that I'm fine to give some credence to. Like, I think they could actually, they could make it out of the group, but It's like a very reserved, maybe like a power ranking G2, Navi, Complexity, NIP. Like Navi and Complexity are quite close.
Run the table. Run the table. Right, let's get on to our final group.
I do think, unfortunately, Elige is still like the strongest piece of this team, and he was the newest addition. Some of the players seem to be crumbling. JT looked great, but also his numbers cannot be consistent with like what he did at Sydney. So
no, the team had its best results with Elige looking sensational. Like he was an elite rifler. Floppy started playing like how American commentators describe him. And Holzerk didn't really do much beyond
JT was sick.
Standard. JT was sick, and weirdly enough, but then it kind of, when it all fell off the cliff and all went to shit, Elige still got his numbers in fairly consistently. He played fine, but everyone else, reverted back to pre-explosion form. So there's something to think about there. But I think, before we get too far into this group that we only had one pick from, let's get into Group D, where there are 2 picks. And we start with yours. A favorite.
Virtus Pro. My favorites. Same reason I picked Spirit. I have a lot of time for James and this squad. First off, Norbert is their worst player, but he's been playing great. He's legitimately at the tournaments that he's attended, his role feels more defined. Like this, the Virtus Pro system hasn't had as much firm-fitting pieces as Virtus Pro does right now. I see team cohesion. I see like firm direction. Like I think this team actually knows who it wants to be now, instead of being like, oh, we're just gonna play out super late rounds. We're gonna make you make mistakes. Like I think they actually target and come in with proper game plans aside from just feeling things out constantly. So yeah, Virtus Pro easily, one of these teams that's outside of the partner system, but could definitely take down one of your favorites at the top of the ladder. I'd wager at least 5 out of 10 times. So they are a 50 team, but they'll beat all the teams below them for sure.
Virtus Pro are 5th in the world, according to the HLTV rankings. By playing and finishing in the top levels of 5 events, none of which were elite. Not a single one was elite. Mm-hmm. It has been the most Banana Cup run to the top 5 I've ever seen. Their last elite event was Pro League Season 18, which was in August of last year, and they went out in the round of I don't know what to call it. They finished 13th to 16th. The Pro League playoffs are a bit awkward, where they lost to 9Z. I'm not going to lie, I think this is a very risky pick. I think, despite what you say being correct, I do think their system has in places looked better. I think there's very little foundation to build confidence in this team on, because they haven't really played anyone that I consider a really good team in a while. The best team they've played is Monty, who eliminated them from Jönköping. They played FaZe Online, who beat them in Thunderpick. They lost to Spirit.
They played Ents as well at Jönköping, I think.
Nope. Gamer Legion, MIBR, 3D Max.
Thinking of a different time. I feel like they always play there.
Yeah, their last win against a really good team, realistically, would have been heroic at Thunderpick. So I think this team is... They're on fraud alert. To use a term that everyone loves to use in American sports analysis, internet analysis, they're on fraud watch. They really are, because I'm going to be honest, I think their rating is built off very little. It's a paper foundation. And as much as I love James, I always pick them as underdogs when they come into big events. I'm not confident in them. I'm really not. I love the playstyle. I even loved their bullshit playstyle of waiting and hoping you make a mistake, because it was kind of, to me, satisfying at times how methodical they were about this approach. But I do think, this is a Paper Tiger might be a bit far, but a risky pick for sure. I'm not as confident as you by any means.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. It's not exactly it's not built on the sturdiest of foundations. I get it. Listen, they didn't even know what they were doing with the roster really for a long time because they were like, "Oh, Norbert's in, Chiron, Norbert come back, and
Yeah, they went through
Mir,
some-
yeah, we're gonna get Mir. That's who we need."
Yeah,
And so
we'll fix our chemistry and really be a great team player. Mir, your reputation's sparkling. Come on.
yeah, and you're definitely not some sort of bad omen to dead teams. But
no.
my thing with VP is that every move they made, in terms of bringing in new players, always felt like an upgrade. When we were replacing Buster, when we were replacing Kickert, when we were replacing Sanji, more importantly, everybody
make a major final with this roster?
everybody felt like an upgrade. Them regressing back to Norbert, it's a little bit strange, but this is a very different Norbert. Like, he's actually playing a very different brand of Counter-Strike. So I don't know. Like, I like enough of what I've seen from them on a LAN environment. Jönköping looked all right, even though they came third, fourth, and then Atlanta looked pretty solid. Like, these guys, to me, they just need to honestly play more repetitions against top level teams, because I can almost guarantee that they're not getting as many scrims as they would like against these top level teams, even though they're not facing them frequently enough in these tournaments, because they're not in attendance for most of them.
Yeah.
So.
No, I appreciate the one, I think, good part that really you can lean on, I think, at this point, is that there isn't a weak link on the team. It was meant to be Norbert, but he's looking like, well, he's playing on K23, not Virtus Pro, because when he was on K23, it was him and Fame both putting up the big numbers and making that team, well, as relevant as it could be. So, yeah, this has been a better showing from him, and Mir seems to have accepted a role that you wouldn't have expected.
Kind of unlike him, yeah.
Yeah, so there's good things. It's just, a lack of confidence for me. But their opening opponent is a team I've decided to put my faith in. And I've historically not picked them as underdogs, even though they're a favourite of many people to pick as an underdog. A lot of believers in this roster. Now, they've also gone on their own sort of online Banana Cup run to end last year. Although even smaller events, it must be said. And that's Big, who won Yala Compass Fall 2023. I mean, if you want to talk elite events, hold on. We have to get the sheet out here. They beat Aurora, Sprout, 9. I mean, come on. We're talking about some big dogs. And unless you forget, Yala Compass Fall did feature such amazing teams as Guild Eagles, Bet Boom. Like, this is a real event in Tier 2. So, these are events that they're winning that are smaller, but more importantly, it's a bet on their playstyle, the way they've looked in these games, how confident they've been. Crimbo looks wow. Honestly, he just looks wow. Like, he's the best closer in all these events. In terms of Tier 2, he's as good as it gets when it comes to just closing rounds with massive multi-kills, playing every fight as optimally as possible. He's been sensational. Prosus, who is a player I really liked in the Academy side, finally gets his chance to step up, and he has been great in these events. He's the guy who takes the bigger risks on the opening fights, on these sorts of duels. He's really good in them. And Mantu's playing he's playing as good as he ever played in Tier 1. Like, he's playing at that sort of level. So I think there's a lot to be excited about Big. They're going to have a good structure, a good system. They're going to try and make the most of the pieces they have. And I think their pieces are pretty hot right now. So this is a great time to bet on Big. It's the first event of the year. Let's see if they can ruffle some feathers.
Yeah, no, and this type of event does play into their kind of strength in that they know who they're going to face off relatively early. Their also Tabson's been looking great. I'm actually kind of surprised on this roster. Sin isn't kind of better. Like, he's been playing good. I think I remember from when he was sort of jumping up into from the academy system, I was more excited about like the potential sort of ceiling from him.
I've got some thoughts on that actually.
He's sort of, to me, he's sort of plateaued, or he's putting up good enough numbers. Like, it's not like I want Sin off this roster. It's just, to me, I thought he was on like a trajectory that could have mirrored Crimbo's, but in different roles, perhaps. But Crimbo kind of just hit the ground running and was, I think even when he first played with Big, like, he was already a good closer, but now it feels like he's just getting better at it. So yeah, I see the vision. It's unfortunately, like, if you're going to criticize me for Virtus Pro Banana Cups, like, listen, they played in all these Banana Cups, but they didn't win them all. You know,
they're
like
an underdog. They're an underdog.
yeah, they are an underdog.
It's a low standard. It's a low standard. But yeah, that's obviously a criticism that can be leveled at them. But I think Sin is a bit of an interesting one because in this team he's like, I think he's playing as good as you can expect from his roles. I mean, he's having impact despite not being in the most impactful spots. I think he's playing a good game. I get what you mean in terms of in the academy side, he was one of the other guys we all had our eyes on. But no, I think this is a good enough. This is good enough for Sin, and if an opportunity like opens up for him to take like a more assertive role, perhaps maybe we'll see another side to him. But I think for now he's kind of too far down the pecking order to ever really get much beyond this in terms of statistical production. As long as he's not making errors, I think when you're watching his games, that's what you want from him. And yeah, from that side of things, he's been good enough.
Yeah, I kind of have nothing more to say about Big. Like,
that's fair enough. Fair enough. No, I mean, we've got the last two teams here are the big conversation pieces. And the first one's Cloud9, who I'm going to be honest, I don't know about you, but for me it's the simple waiting room. So I'm not sure what to make of them. They are technically a favourite at this event, being in the top half of the rankings of the teams. But I'm still not convinced in terms of them having truly committed to a single vision. It feels a bit questionable in terms of what they're going to do next. So how do you see them?
Cloud9 are strange because it almost feels like to me, the way that they were pointing the finger and, you know, not exactly taking losses in good grace leads to some kind of weird culture behind the scenes. Like, I don't know if Shiro is sort of going, you see how bad they are without me? Or, and look, I've just landed on Spirit, you know, they're a good prospect. Donk, it looks sick. I can surpass my old team. You know, kind of a la Nafany a little bit, like, except Shiro left on his own terms. He wasn't, you know, booted.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it is a Simple waiting room, in which case you just got to sort of go, wait, Simple relinked up back with like all of his old Na'Vi teammates on another organization, and I'm here with a bunch of children and Chopper. Like, who gets the better end of this deal?
We'll see.
I do think it's just strange that they're committed to this, like, we don't have a main AWPer thing, and like Boomich is just
I really hate that.
Kind of doing it. Yeah, I hate that they doubled down on it. You know, for me, if they had just gone with like, we're experimenting with something here, like maybe not having an AWP is fine. You know, Boomich is still settling into the role, and you know, we're giving it a shot. You know, all the added ideas, blah blah blah. You didn't try to justify it like that at all. It was just kind of like, oh well, we don't think we need an AWP. Huh? Like, he did say it was an experiment, but we don't think we need an AWP. Every other team would beg to differ, and there's a reason ZywOo still number one.
Yeah.
Still Simple very much in the conversation. Like these are all AWPers that are good on rifles. Like, it's not like you can't be good at both, and Shiro was kind of good at both, but they couldn't hold on to him. So yeah, maybe Simple is destined to go to Cloud9. That would be not the strangest thing in the world, but it does basically say, like, why did you pick up Boomich in the first place? Like, what was the sort of vision at the time? Because, you know, how is Art Frost somehow not made it, or how is, you know, is that just because you missed the transfer window? Even when you got Boomich, surely you ask for Art Frost if you're gonna go for like a proper 1-for-1 for Shiro, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're going to be doing, and that's what I was saying before. Just the vision to me seems a bit either strange or just missing, so I'm not really willing to put any weight behind them. Not going to.
They're also like in the favorite category,
yeah,
right? Because of the rankings. Same with Falcons. So
if they were underdogs, then yeah, perhaps I would have taken a shot on them, but otherwise, no. And our final team is a team that we could have picked as an underdog, and neither one of us did. And that's Heroic, who have reconstructed a roster. A roster that was good enough to make it to the closed qualifier for the Europe RMR.
Yep.
It's not the biggest praise, but it's something. This roster, if those of you who for some reason don't know, is Nertz, Tessas, Nikodos, Shush, and Kiksan. I think they've done a pretty good job scrambling to save some sort of team, like just put something together. It's not glorious, it's not going to immediately spark joy in everyone who's thinking about the return of Heroic to the top, but honestly, you could have done a lot worse. You could have done a way worse job of saving yourself.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at with it as well. I didn't really expect. I kind of almost expected Heroic to just shrivel up and evaporate with like the way that things were sort of headed. You know, they weren't going to hold on to Dupree. They lost Down and Yabi. They lost Cadian. You know, for me as an esports organization that, you know, was very vocal about how it didn't have money, and, you know, maybe they got some money out of the Stown and Yabi move, sure, but I do appreciate that they're committed enough to try and make it work. And yeah, this roster is, it's fine. You know, I'm not maybe too worried about Nertz. You know, I don't think he'll be the same player on this team as we came to expect out of the version we saw on Ents, because he was only on Ents for basically the whole year this year.
Yeah.
For us in terms of like tier 1 success, that's great. He's a very old rookie, but yeah, I do think it's just like, I don't know if I have enough confidence in Kixan to in-game lead a squad that doesn't even have like a basis of how it wants to play at the moment. You know, most of the time he's come into rosters that were already kind of 60-70% of the way there, and he's just giving them an extra 20-30%. Now this is him. Like, he has to fully construct a system around these players.
Yeah, can he build fresh? That's a real question, because I know when he came into Apex, I know he wasn't doing that. It's pretty well known that he wasn't like some great progenitor of new ideas. He was very much just is kind of what the coach wants to do. You know, add your flair, do your thing, make the calls you need to make, but realistically, you're not setting out a whole new system. I'm not sure what to think of it. I think in theory, it could be a very successful team if the Kixan part of it gets resolved. If the Kixan can make it himself like work, if he can get his head around being this IGL, sort of taking that responsibility under his belt. I don't know how to say this exactly, but if he can really harness that power for good, this team can be really good, because they have talent. And that talent that has been at the top. But otherwise, I think it's just going to be a bit of a gamble at this level. I do kind of want them to win, though. I'm just going to put that out there. I do kind of want them to succeed. I think it'd be nice to see them.
I mean, first off, I can't in good faith be like, oh, Astralis, they're going to cook, and then be sad that, or rather be glad that Heroic are dying. Like, I actually want this team to do quite well as well. You know, that whole trying to get their feet underneath them is not only something to sort of ID Kixan for, like, it's everybody else as well. Like, this is a new in-game leader for all of them as well. And they're all used to wildly different styles of gameplay than what Kixan has been playing as of late. So yeah, I hope Soul and Kixan can come up with something, basically something serviceable to. Yeah, I want them to beat Cloud9. I'll put it that way.
All right. Well, fair enough. We're going to find out. But yeah, I think that brings us to the end of it. And for us, it's actually getting a bit late as well. Actually, wow. Okay, yeah, we did start a lot later than we usually do.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. That's on me. So.
Oh, honestly, our planned start time was pretty late for us. So this has been an interesting one. Glad to be back doing these, because my God, I've been watching a lot of very low-level CS recently. Honestly, there's been nothing to watch except the very worst of the worst Tier 4 events and these open qualies, which is, yeah, sure. Watching a co-stream makes it a lot better than having to just watch some of these horrendous matches that have been going on in the background. But yeah, it's going to be nice to see some, hopefully, elite level play. As you said, hopefully the teams take this one seriously. As always, thank you for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm sure to laugh at them in private and sometimes enjoy them and give you a response, but we'll see what you come up with. And yeah, that's all for now, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.